What's the percentage of the UK that's ethnic minority? You know what it is?
It's about 10 or 11%. It depends on 10%. The census, of course. The last one is 9 years out, 9 years old.
What's the representation in the parliament? It's 2%.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's 2%. Thank you very much for your call, Marlon. Maybe, Sukant, it's 2% because people are not engaging, they're not involved, and they think, well, there's no point in trying because the system's against me, even though we've had all this legislation, 1999, you know, the Act of Parliament following Stephen Lawrence's murder, we've had a Race Relations Amendment Act, we've had another Act of Parliament. You know, Ahmed mentioned it, Equality Bill just gone through Parliament. Things are changing, but people don't recognise it, and as a result, they marginalise themselves.
Where I would agree with you is that I believe that minority communities should organise themselves. And if they feel they are not represented by the mainstream parties, which I believe so to be the case, then they should develop their own representation. So that's the only kind of area of agreement where I can have with you.
Isn't that segregation? Some people say, oh, why do they need their own organisations? They should join the mainstream and change it from within. But you believe in separation?
No, I don't believe in separation. I believe in communities having their own organisations and on that basis to ally with each other and to come together with each other. So I'm not advocating separate black or communal or sectarian organisations. What I'm saying is people who have the commonality of feeling alienated and unrepresented and misrepresented should come together if there's no alternative.
The question is then, what kind of groups can come together? Back in the day, there was black and white unite and fight, Ahmed. In the 70s, you had Irish workers, you had Indian workers, you had African and Caribbean workers. You don't see that sense of unity today. Now, I wonder why that is.
I think, I mean, we have like Operation Blackwater, which is inclusive of Asians and the black community. However, I mean, there are already groups. I mean, if I'm looking from a Muslim perspective because that's my speciality. So if you look at during these elections, we have so many, you know, so many different number of groups. They are not working together, but at least they are working in their own ways to try and encourage young people to go and participate in the political process, to go out and register and vote. So there's a huge amount of activity taking place there.
And that is to be encouraged. That is to be encouraged. Hugely, let's go to our next question. See what you out there on the street want to put to our guests.
There are loads and loads of people in this country who are poor and won't vote in this election because they feel they've been failed by the political classes. What is your plan to re-engage them?
Sukant, have the poor really been failed by the political classes? Is that a specific problem with the poor in this country? Because some people don't believe there is real poverty in this country when you compare it to what we see in Mexico, in India, in China and in large parts of the continent of Africa. Have the poor really been failed here, or have they just not managed to get themselves up and use all the tools that are available?
Again, I think it's a combination of those two things, that they have been failed, and there is, in England especially, there is a political demoralisation. You know, this is not, as you kind of implied before, this is not the 80s and 70s where there was a political dynamism. I mean, in England, I think that the organisation that has the most relevance to the situation in England is probably the Respect Coalition. They draw upon anti-racism themes. They have a very good position, obviously, on foreign policy, and they have this left social democratic economic policy, which fits in well to what's going on in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales.
But Ahmed, isn't it better to join the main political parties, some of whom have talked about diversity, talked about ending the marginalisation of ethnic minorities? David Cameron, of course, the leader of the Tory party, has brought in a number of African and Asian potential candidates in winnable seats. The Labour Party have done more than they've done in previous elections. Isn't that the way to do it, to join the mainstream parties? Or do you risk being marginalised from within because you then join the big tent and you sell out your people?
No, I think it is important to join the parties, otherwise you cannot bring about a change. I mean, you might have Respect Party, I think it's very, very good, but again, you see that they have very little clout in the parliament because it's the way the system works. But I think in the mainstream party, you can bring about a change by really pushing for things that you need to push for. And I think it's true that the highest unemployed in this country are amongst the black and the Asian, especially the black community, Pakistanis and Bangladeshis, who are especially in the inner cities. And the work is being done, but I think it's not enough. Not only they are poor, but underachievement in education, again, it's highest amongst Pakistanis and Bangladeshis.
Well, people are very, very interested in this topic. You two are really generating a lot of interest out there among our viewers. Adam is on the line. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
What would you like to say?
The way that I kind of think about minority ethnic people being involved in mainstream politics, I guess, is kind of twofold. You've got the kind of recent immigrant population in the United Kingdom, which I think very much is in tune with British foreign policy. And none of the three main political parties really address British foreign policy properly. There is, of course, the Respect Party, the Green Party, but in terms of the three main parties, there aren't really a lot of options out there. And then you also, of course, have minority ethnic communities who have been in the country for generations. Yeah. And it seems that in terms of large piece of legislation, like the Race Relations Act, for instance, which has really changed the lives of minority ethnic people in Britain, they haven't really come about through engaging with mainstream representative government. It's mainly been through, you've seen the Bradford riots, the Brixton riots, all of like the more kind of direct forms of democracy, I think. So I think both for historical reasons and for the reasons of foreign policy today, it's very difficult for minority ethnic people really to feel like they're represented by parliamentary politics.
Adam, thank you very much indeed. Sukant, is that the way we should be seeing it? Maybe this question is too simplistic, you know, and we've got different waves of immigrants who've experienced different things. So people who came in the 50s, no coloureds, no Irish, no dogs. And then, of course, in the 70s, people were fighting for their rights to get jobs and to be accepted. And then, of course, the people born from 1990 onwards, they're as British as anybody, and the challenges are different. Maybe we need to be more sophisticated in our approach.
Yeah, sure. I think I agree with everything you said, but I think Adam's making a slightly different point. I think Adam's talking about the absence of political representation for the community he's talking about, and he's right. You know, no one wants to advocate violence or, you know, unlawful protest. But if you look at the history in this country, and if you look at France as a good example recently, things only change, and you know, a lot of time dispossessed people, working class people of all colours, you know, no one listens to them until they turn the place upside down. Yeah. And then
once they turn the place upside down, it's the people inside the big tent who've then got to deal with the mopping up operation and push for the legislation. After the fires have been doused, then they come in. After that, we've got another caller. People are hot tonight. Good evening, caller. Is that Paul?
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. What would you like to ask?
I would like to raise first a point. I think that all the debate all the debate that's gone on so far ignores one fundamental point.
Which is?
That fundamental point is, you know, who are those people that we keep referring to as ethnic minorities? I mean, you know, they are made out to be like a homogeneous group, which is not true. I mean, you know, there are people like of all different faiths, different colors, different belief systems, you know, so I mean, I think it's erroneous to talk about ethnic minorities as if they were like this group, this block of people.
Do you know what? For years, people have struggled with the name, struggled with the term. They talk about ethnic minority, minority ethnic, black, African, African Caribbean, Afro-Caribbean, Asian, British, Muslim. What would you settle for?
Precisely. That is my point, you know, and that is a very good ploy on how to separate those people one from another. Now, I believe that you know, the Labour government has done a lot of good things. I believe that there is a lot more that needs to be done. However, so long as we talk about the Afro-Caribbean ethnic minorities, we talk about the Indians, we talk about the Bangladeshis, we talk about the Pakistanis, all these causes, these are just smoke screens which deters us from the main aim.
All right, well, thank you very much indeed. So, Ahmed, is the problem the labels that we give to people? Because think about it, when I was growing up, when I was very young, we were called coloured. And then we fought against that. We said we were black, and then it was, for my friends from the West Indies, Afro-Caribbean, then it was African Caribbean. You see, and some people don't even want to use the word Caribbean, just we're all African. Everybody, whether you're Asian, whether you're Chinese, you're all African. But we have to define people. That's what human beings do, isn't it?
I think it's important to define, for example, we have now that they use the term BME, black and minority, ethnic minorities and so on. But then they exclude others. In this, all this picture, like the census itself, for example, we've got the Turkish community, we've got the Arab community, and even within the black community, the Somali community is excluded.
Yes.
So I think it is important that we do acknowledge that there are other communities other than the label that we use. And if I don't mind using any kind of label, but we have to define and to be inclusive of every, if we talk about minorities, of every minorities. Otherwise, what happens is there's some within these ethnic minorities or minority communities who are